Hi, I'm Josh, and in this video I'm going to talk about should you learn music theory, and if you should decide to learn it, how can you practice it? Not a while ago I made a video about showing you apps which help you learn music theory, and I made a kind of bold promise in that. I will not talk about if you should learn music theory, I will cover that in a completely different video later on. And here I am. So in today's video I'm going to show you what is music theory, or our understanding of music theory, and when you decide to learn music theory, what's a good approach to learn that. But now back to the question, should you learn music theory? And the short answer is yes. You should. Basically, music theory is a way to communicate with other musicians. It's like the universal language we use to communicate our musical ideas without having to play them in front of every other people, and just could write them down and send them over. And in a more technical way, I don't want to get that much into detail, but just a short explanation, it all centers on the note A, which has a frequency of 440 Hertz. And so this is, in Germany we call it the Kammerton. So if you're tuning an instrument, you use that tone, and in a reference to that tone you tune your instruments. And every scale is made up around this note. So for example, you have the regular A, which is 440 Hertz. Then you go an octave below to the next A, which has a frequency of 220 Hertz. So we cut it by half. Then you go an octave lower, it's 110 Hertz, and you see where this is going. There are a lot of different tunings to different instruments, and some of them they vary a bit around the 440 Hertz. So some have a tuning of 444 Hertz, some have a tuning of 432 Hertz. So you have a small difference, but basically the 440 Hertz is something many musicians agreed on to being that specific note to center around. I will put a link down in the description about the more technical aspects of music theory and how it developed through history, from Pythagoras to Bach, and how they created the music theory we know today. And coming back from that technical aspect, music theory sets the ground rules for speaking to another in a musical language. So everything you learn, scales, chords, intervals, the rhythms not so, they're a bit more different, but everything about that is how you understand music and how you can explain it to others without playing a specific piece in front of them. You can just write it down and send it to your band members, and they, if they have the same understanding on music theory, see what you are playing and can instantly play that on their instrument as well, or see what you are doing. So maybe we should narrow down the question, not if you should learn music theory, but more like to what extent should you learn music theory, because there's really so much you can learn, and you can spend hours, weeks, months, years learning every aspect of music theory, and you should decide what's the part of music theory that actually helps you. A lot of music theory you will learn while playing an instrument comes naturally to you, because you learn that specific hand positions on the guitar or on a keyboard are a C major chord or a C minor chord, and you learn to play the scales. So even though there's a lot more that you can actually learn, the basics will still come to you while playing your instrument. So now I hear some of you saying, well, I'm a rock musician, I play guitar, I don't need to learn music theory and how to read notes and how to write down notes. Totally fine. There are a lot of great musicians who never learned music theory, they just played, and it's perfectly fine. But let's take an example I use when I have an idea for a riff or even a complete song. I could record it, or I could play it to my band members and show them what I was playing and explain it to them, and they could try to noodle around and figure out, okay, these are the chord progressions, these are the notes, this is the scale, and we can try to find something that accompanies all that. Or I could write it down, send it to them, and they can prepare before our next band practice to learn the piece, or to see where they can add their instruments, or even where they can change something, where they say, well, this would sound different or even better if you just change this part up. But let's say you're somewhere around, you want to play your guitar, you have another guitar player with you, or someone wants to join and you want to play together. It's easier just to agree on, let's say we're playing in a G major scale and the rhythm is a 4/4. Everyone knows what they actually have to do or which shape you're playing. It makes it easier to just come together and jam around. Now, should you decide to burden your mind with music theory, then I will give you now a 7-step approach I use to learn music theory, which helped me a lot to understand it, and maybe you can use that one as well. Number 1. Learn to read notes, especially in the treble and in the bass clef. If you're playing the piano, if you're just playing the guitar, the treble clef is enough, up to the first or even the second ledger. It helps you a lot reading a musical piece and understanding how it works, how the melody progresses, and that you can use it in your music playing. Number 2. Always apply what you learned in a theoretical way on your instrument. So if you have a new scale, a new chord or interval or rhythm, see it, write it down, and then play it. This will help you learn this part better, keep it memorized in your brain, and you understand how different things you learn in the theoretical way actually work on your instrument. Number 3. Learn and repeat. Don't spend too much time on one specific part. Try to progress in your learning of music theory, but repeat everything you learned once in a while, like once a month with a specific test, where you just sit down and play every scale you heard, you play every interval, and you test yourself. Remember the video I made about the music theory learning apps? You can use them as a kind of challenge and try to repeat the stuff you already learned. Number 4. Learn in small chunks. As I said, there's so much to learn about music theory, and you could start with everything at once, learn the C major scale, every chord there is to the C major scale, every interval, the relative minor scale, then the pentatonic scale to the C major, and whatever. But at the end of it, then you will forget everything, the basic C major scale. So just try to learn small chunks after a while and try to add up different things once in a while. Number 5. Ear training is key. Really use some of your time to learn ear training, to recognize intervals, to recognize chords, to play scales and hear them. This will improve your understanding of scales and intervals much faster and will improve your ability to play an instrument even more. Number 6. Learn to write a song without hearing it. I know this sounds a bit crazy and a bit too advanced, but once you are comfortable in reading a few notes and writing down notes, and you have a basic understandings on some scales and chords, try to write down a song just with your memory. So you just use the scales, you know how they sound, you know how the intervals sound, write it down and then play it and see how it sounds. And then you can see if what is in your mind actually is the same thing you can play on your instrument, or if it's completely different. And number 7, don't give up. I know music theory can be boring. I know that. You sit down, you try to read notes, you try to understand how chords are built up. Always try to find a new way to approach a different theoretical part, like with your instrument, or look up a YouTube video where someone explains it and maybe you can understand it better. But be consistent. Try to learn every time a bit more about music theory if you really want to do that. So that's basically my part about should you learn music theory. I hope you don't feel exhausted and want to stay as far away from music theory as possible. If you want to give music theory and learning it a try, please let me know in the comments. If you're already doing it, what's your approach? How do you integrate music theory in your musical practice? And until then, I hope to see you in my next video.